Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's Influence Stories. And today I have the immense honor of welcoming a great friend and a lady who is running for office, and her name is Tania Cruz-Gimenez. Tania, welcome, and thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy day to join us here today.
Thank you so much, Helena. It's a pleasure.
So today we're going to talk about several things. We're going to talk about what we're looking at in Coral Gables. She is running for the Coral Gables Commission. And now you're going to tell us everything about the seat and when the elections are and when early voting begins. Because remember, early voting is starting momentarily, I feel like. And we're also going to talk about some issues about being professional women, working moms. These are all issues that are in everyone's mind lately. So especially with COVID and the pandemic and how that has affected working women in our community. So Tania, let's start about talking about, tell us the seat, where you're running, when there are elections. Give us the details of this election.
Okay, so I am running for Group 2, and there's 6 of us, and that is to replace the current Vice Mayor, Vince Lago, who's running for Coral Gables Mayor. Ballots already went out. They went out 1 week early, and so people are already voting. So if you haven't received your ballot and you're expecting one, please call Miami-Dade County Elections to follow up, or you can check online. Early voting, we're going to have 2 days of early voting that they added, thankfully, on Saturday and Sunday before the election, the 10th and the 11th, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., which will be at the Coral Gables Library exclusively. And there will also be a secure lockbox. So if you do not feel comfortable mailing in your ballot, you can drop it off there. And so we're expecting a very high turnout because a lot of people do have their ballots because of the general election. So we have about more than 12,000 ballots that have been sent out.
That's fantastic. So again, when is Election Day?
Election Day is April 13th. And then if no one gets 50 plus 1%, which, given the number of candidates, that's highly unlikely, it will go into a runoff the 2 weeks after on April 27th. And also early voting 2 days before that, Saturday and Sunday.
And that's very important. So we just got out of a very contended and very difficult general election in November, as everybody is aware, or at least I hope everybody's aware. And it was definitely very difficult. And maybe people are like, you know what? It was a presidential election. I voted in my presidential election. I am done. And the reality is that a lot of people don't participate in their local elections, but local elections are so incredibly important. These are the people that will decide your day-to-day things that will affect you. How much your property taxes are going to go up or down, how much your trash is going to go up or down, what streets to have work done on and what streets to close, what streets to open, infrastructure within your city, hiring police officers, fire departments, so many things that affect our everyday lives and that are decided in off-year elections like this one in April. So I ask everyone to vote, to just show up and vote, especially that you have early voting, you can drop off your ballot. There's so many different choices.
Absolutely. And listen, to your point, it really does affect our overall quality of life. And I never really appreciated it until these past recent years. I was one of those people that really only focused on federal politics, on national elections. The issues seemed sexier. But the reality is, the more I started delving into the local issues, it really is what impacts our everyday quality of life, whether our kids will be safe, whether we'll be safe, again, our streets, whether they're flooding, whether we have tree canopies, everything, traffic, development, whether businesses can succeed or fail, our tax base. And so as so many people are focused on the national issues over which we really have very little control, we do have a say here. And if we do not vote, then we're not going to see the results that we want.
That's right. So you have to participate. You have to show up for your community. I've always been a strong supporter of local involvement, local politics. Know who your mayor is, who are your commissioners, because those are the people that you're going to want to talk to when something is happening in your neighborhood. So before we get into some of the issues that are coming up in Coral Gables, I would like to just take a minute and talk about your career. What do you do when you are not running for office? Because this is your first time, right, that you run for office?
This is my first, yes.
Fantastic. New faces, that's always great. So what do you do in your day job, so to speak?
Well, I'm a practicing attorney, and I've been practicing for more than 16 years, almost 17 years now, in the areas of complex commercial litigation, international arbitration, and white-collar crime, with an emphasis on Foreign Corrupt Practices Act and internal corporate investigations. I started out in big law, global law firms, and I was doing that downtown, first Steele, Hector and Davis, then Squire Patton Boggs, then Brian Cave, up until, well, let's say about for almost 12, 13 years. And then the development in the traffic downtown got so bad, and I was taking so much time in the car and away from the family, that I decided at one point I wanted to go out on my own. And so 3 years ago, I opened up my own practice on Sevilla. So now I work in downtown, I live within walking distance, and my kids are going to school in Coral Gables. And at the same time, I also have a political and public advocacy consulting company there as well.
And you, so when you say that your office is in downtown, you mean in downtown Coral Gables?
Correct. Downtown Coral Gables. I love downtown Miami for downtown Coral Gables.
Right. Very good. And you live in, how long have you lived in Coral Gables?
I've lived here 14 and a half years now.
That's a long time.
And I love it.
Yes, it's a wonderful city. So we have talked about in the past about being a working mother. I know you have two little girls. I have two little girls, and balancing it all. And you're very busy. You're very driven. Tell me a little bit about how do you manage, and I've made a decision for anyone watching Influence Stories that every time that I interview a working mom or a mom or anything, I will ask them about this balance, so-called balance that we're all seeking. Tell me a little bit about how, you made the decision to do your own firm so that you're able to, manage your own time, but that also comes with being an entrepreneur. There are all sorts of things you have to deal with. So tell me a little bit about how you've managed to find this work-life balance, if you've been able to find it.
Well, that's if you can find it. I think as women, as working women, we're always striving to achieve that. So one of the things that I did was, my office is very close to my kids' school. They both, like I said, go to Coral Gables Prep. And so we can walk over there, or it's a 5-minute drive. I made the office very mommy or child friendly. And so we have areas that are exclusively for them, a couch that actually turns into a bed, TVs, their games, so when they're done with their homework, they can, be entertained if I'm doing other things or if clients come in. And I think from day one, I've always just incorporated them into my life. A lot of moms have always separated the kids and work to the extent that I could, with friends, with meetings. I always wanted to have them around because, you always hear that it goes so fast, the time, but until you actually experience it, and, I hate to think that I'm as old as I am. I'm going to be 46 this year. And the only time I remember is really based on their birthdays, because, in my head, I'm still in my 20s.
Yeah. The same way. I always base it on, let me see. Yeah, they were 4. So then this is what was going on. It's so funny. It's true. It's true. Yeah. And you know what? That's a great tactic, to have a family friendly office. And when we're able to manage our space, when we have our own business, we're able to do these things and accommodate not only ourselves, but other employees that may also be in that situation. So I think that's a great thing for you to share with us. I really appreciate that. I love that idea. And, being close to your kids' school is always helpful. So now, how do you think that this pandemic has or hasn't affected working mothers?
Well, it's definitely, I think, affected all of us in one way, shape, or form. If you were lucky enough to have the type of job that you were able to work from home, that did alleviate some things. But at the same time, you were homeschooling the kids. And for those of us who started it back in, I guess, early March, when everybody started closing down, there were a lot of glitches in that system. And so, the administration, the teachers really didn't know how to work it. The parents didn't know how to work it, let alone the children. There was a lot of touch and go. trying to figure out how to do your work, homeschool your kids, take care of the house, keep sane. At that time, we thought that just about everything was contaminated. And so you were putting bleach everywhere, anything that was ordered, can you go on Amazon and find toilet? A lot of the crazy things that were going on at that time. And so, and one thing that I'm actually finding when I go door to door is that, I think as a community and as a nation, probably we're suffering from a collective PTSD from having just been locked up for all that time. But again, as difficult as it was for someone like me, I still had the luxury where I could stay home with my daughters. And, with whatever complications they were, at least we were here. The mothers that are nurses, that were working in Publix, that are frontline workers, and a whole slew of professions that needed to go out there. I would think about them, whenever I'd start feeling sorry for myself, I'd say, you know what? I have it good because at least I'm here in my home. We can go on a bike, and we would, tandem bikes that we bought and bike around Granada. And we had that. And then I would think to myself, God, what is it like if you're a mom, especially a single mom, and you're a frontline worker, and you have to be homeschooling your child, and you have nobody to take care of your child? And do you have the best technology? I mean, all of these things that none of us were really prepared for, and that I think that we really need to take into consideration on a going forward basis. So if ever anything like this happens again, we're prepared.
It's very difficult, the situation with mothers. There are many studies that have shown that mothers working mothers have felt a very big setback with this pandemic, because they were the first ones that, stayed home with their kids. And it's a very difficult decision. Of course, it's a very personal decision, but it's something that we definitely need to address as we move forward. And you mentioned walking, and you mentioned talking to people. I know you do that, which is why I really thank you for having this time to talk to us, because I know that walking is a big part of what you've been doing. We're very close to the election at this point. Let's talk about some of the issues that have come up from you speaking to residents in Coral Gables that perhaps you would like to address if you're elected.
Well, I would say overdevelopment, of course, everyone knows is the issue. But it's not simply just overdevelopment. It's the type of development. It's the high rises. It's without a lot of resident input. And then when the residents do have a chance to opine, it's clear that they don't want that. And so across the board, I'm not hearing that people are against development. It's not an anti-development stance. Most people understand that development is necessary and that, property owners have rights. But what they don't want is what has been happening, just throwing up developments, high rises without a comprehensive plan to address existing infrastructure issues, to address existing traffic issues. Again, traffic is a second issue that we will never eradicate. Traffic is something we're always going to have, particularly as we're trying to recruit more people to live within our cities. But at the same time, before you start adding density, you can take measures to mitigate existing traffic, in particular in our residential neighborhoods. One thing that Coral Gables has is that we have an interlocal agreement with Miami-Dade County that allows us to implement certain traffic mitigation devices without county approval, such as the circles and the speed cushions. A lot of people have been promised speed cushions. In fact, the city had hired 4 outside consultants who conducted a study, and they had the plan in place to start providing these traffic mitigation devices, but they have been very slow to the punch. And so what are residents seeing? They're seeing that they're increasing density, but at the same time, the devices that they've been promised to mitigate the existing traffic have not been installed. And then another issue is customer service. And when I say customer service, I mean specifically within the administrative part of the city. And this is something that I'm hearing from longtime residents. Although I've lived here 14 and a half years, by Coral Gables standards, I'm a newbie. I think the median that I hear from talking to people is 40 years, 50, 60. And so what are they telling me? That as they're calling up city staff, they're not getting any returns to their phone calls, to their emails, and that this responsiveness, this quality of service has gone down. And so we really need to focus on the residents, what their concerns are. make sure that if there's enforcement of any zoning issues, that it is across the board. It's not selective. You're not picking and choosing who you want to enforce certain provisions against. And let's just make our overall quality of life better. Maintain what we have and make it better. Again, police and fire, everyone says that they're amazing, first class, second to none. We want to maintain that. We want to maintain our safety and security. And adequate staffing now as new developments are coming up, because there's so many of these projects that are about to go live. And so with that increased density, we are going to need increased police and fire to deal with any potential issues that we have. And then, beyond everything, what does the future hold? Climate change. We need to make sure that our city is resilient. And, one of the bright sides, if you can call it that, of the pandemic and all of the business closures along Miracle Mile in our central business district is that it's provided us a unique opportunity to really look at the situation. Look at what happens. Retail, for example, retail was failing prior to the pandemic, traditional brick and mortar retail. The pandemic merely accelerated it. So as we're looking at this, what kind of retail can we put in our downtown corridor that's going to succeed? If we want to make a true live, work, play environment, then we need neighborhood businesses that are going to cater to the people that live there, not things that they can buy in a mall or online. Again, the permitting process. If you want new businesses to come in, if you want new residents to come in, then we need to be a lot more business and resident friendly in terms of our processes and procedures, most of which are very, very antiquated. By way of example, we're still using a paper review system for plans. When e-permitting has been around for years. It would expedite things tremendously. It would be efficient. It would reduce costs. It would save paper. It would be much more environmentally sound, storage space, and there would be transparency and accountability. You'd have all of the disciplines reviewing your plans at the same time concurrently. And if someone's not doing their job, and you could submit them electronically. So these are one of, some of the many things that we should be doing. Our parking garages, they need to be renovated. And so that we have smart parking. That would, one, help with the parking issue, but two, also alleviate congestion. And so we need to be practical. And as we're looking at all of these things, we need to have a plan, because when everyone talks about George Merrick's visionary plan for Coral Gables, the one thing that it seems to me that they're failing to address is the simplest point of all. He had a vision. He had a plan. Where's ours? And if we are going to succeed and be prosperous well into the 21st century, then we really do need to have a plan for a city beautiful that respects its unique character and its history, but that helps us confront these 21st century challenges, whether it's retail failing, whether it's pandemic or anything else like that could come about, or anything else right now, climate change. But we need to be thinking about these things if we want to succeed as a city.
And one of the things that you mentioned that I think is in the minds of anyone that has either lived or worked in Coral Gables, such as myself, even though I don't live in the city, I work there, the future of Miracle Mile. It is such an iconic street, few blocks that are so well known all around the county. What do you think needs to be done? Like you mentioned, some of the retail were already failing, and this just kind of expedited their demise, the COVID-19 pandemic. So how do you see a plan, or what is the future that you see for Miracle Mile?
Well, I don't see a plan, and so that's what I want to deal with first and foremost, and have all stakeholders involved in that, where we're not looking at preservation versus progress. To me, both for Coral Gables are the same. You can come up with a plan that really respects both. Beyond that, we've seen a lot of activation on the mile as of late, a lot of new restaurants, the dining outside. So after the debacle that was the streetscape project that was severely mismanaged, 2 years, $25 million, well, now people are outdoors, right? And they're eating outdoors, and that's been saving a lot of restaurants. But what happens when it's July? What happens when it's steaming hot and humid and nobody wants to go outside? what's going to happen to the businesses then? So we need to think of now, because it's already really getting hot. We're at the end of March. We need to think of cost-effective ways to keep residents outside in those hot summer months to cool them down. Things of that nature. And those temporary permits for outdoor seating, they need to be made permanent immediately. And now that the rezoning of Miracle Mile has passed, that very controversial project to pass 4-1. So we need to learn the lessons from the streetscape project. That construction is imminent. So what happens to the existing businesses once construction starts? Do we have a plan for that? Or are we going to allow them to be bankrupted again? And so, again, I believe in being forward thinking. I know everybody talks about being proactive. It's not just a word. We have to first decide what is our ultimate goal for the city and then work backwards to devise the strategy. But right now, what I'm seeing is a piecemeal approach. And if we keep following it, we're going to just confront the same issues over and over and over again, which is what I can see has been happening here for decades.
Absolutely. So important to have a plan and be able to see where you want to go, to have a goal. Tania, I know that you're very busy and I know that you had a hard stop. So we're going to finish this interview. And I want you to remind everyone, what is the seat number and when are the elections?
I am Tania Cruz-Gimenez, Group 2, number 74 on your ballot. You should have already received your ballot, so you can mail it already. The election is April 13th, and you can vote early on April 10th and 11th at the Gables Library from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. or drop off your ballot there at a secure lockbox.
And as always, we have social media handles running across the bottom. If you want to learn more about Tania and her platform, feel free to follow her on all of the platforms. So I thank you so much. And thank you everyone for watching this video, and make sure you share it and send it to your friends so that everyone can know about this important election. Tania, thank you so much.
Thank you, Helena, and thank you everyone. Vote for Tania.
Thank you.
Bye.